What were the best books of 2024 according to BookTube? Well, I watched 45 videos and over 20 hours to find the answer. Because not everyone did a top 10 list, and instead a lot of people opted for award show videos or just put out their list in no particular order, I decided to go by mentions. So every single time a book was mentioned as a favorite, I gave it a point. Unfortunately, this does mean that there were a lot of ties. However, I tried to use my critical thinking skills and my Instagram followers to determine the order in which I will present these books to you. In 10th place was The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman. This is the 5th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It was mentioned by both Austin and Richard from Tudor Ramble, Andrew Watson, and Spaced Out Wizard. Dungeon Crawler Carl is a series that I really feel like took off in 2024, so I'm not really surprised to find an entry of it on this list. However, I am shocked that it is the 5th book in the series, because I guess I just haven't heard as much about it until we got to the end of the year and everyone was praising it. Dungeon Crawler Carl is a lit RPG series that follows Carl, who is stuck in this dungeon live-streamed game that is run by aliens that took over Earth. And he is just trying to survive in this dungeon as monsters attack him and all these crazy things are happening, and he is accompanied by his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut. It sounds kind of crazy, and personally I haven't read any lit RPG before, but who knows, maybe I'll try it in 2025. In 9th place, we have 11/22/63 by the one and only Stephen King. This was one of the books that was really praised by all sorts of booktubers, from Ian Gubelli and Ashlyn, his wife, to Jay from Paperback Journeys and Marissa Tommen. This really feels like it was a huge crowd pleaser this year. This book is a time travel story that follows Jake Epping as he travels back in time to try and stop the JFK assassination. It also is praised very often for its love story, because people seem to really resonate with that. Personally, this is one of the big Stephen King books that I haven't read yet, and I did say in my mid-year freakout book tag that it was one of my books that I wanted to read before the end of the year, but I'm moving this a year forward and it's gonna happen this year, guys, I promise. I've been really in the mood for some suspenseful historical reading, and this really sounds like it fits a lot of that. And hey, it's been praised by so many people, so it probably delivers on a lot of those things. In 8th place, we have Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Once again, a favorite of the Ramblers, becoming Richard's favorite book, not just of 2024, but of all time. But it was also praised again by Jay from Paperback Journeys and Joanna from Joanna Reads. It is a Western classic that follows these retired Texas Rangers on an epic cattle drive from Texas to Montana. It is often described as a masterwork of storytelling, combining the beauty and brutality of life and really giving an accurate and moving portrayal of the human experience. This is also one that has been recommended to me a lot under my Cormac McCarthy video, so what do you think? Should I pick this one up? Another classic that had a massive resurgence in 2024 was Hyperion by Dan Simmons, making its way to 7th place and being mentioned by Johan from Library of a Viking, Joanna once again, and Bart from Bart's Bookspace. Another amazing Polish creator, so you guys should totally check him out, especially if you like sci-fi. This classical sci-fi epic follows 7 individuals who are on a pilgrimage to the world of Hyperion, and they're all tied together to this entity known as the Shrike. And on this pilgrimage, from what I understand, they are all sharing their different stories. These stories of loss and love and betrayal are also inspired by the English classic, The Canterbury Tales. So it really merges the past and the future together in this beautiful trek. And it all starts with one of my favorite first opening sentences to any book ever. The hegemony consul sat on the balcony of his ebony spaceship and played Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor on an ancient but well-maintained Steinway, while great green saurian things surged and bellowed in the swamps below. In 6th place, we have our first entry on this list from an author who has become one of the BookTube greats, I think, with the way that he's been talked about in the past 12 months. And it is Howling Dark by Christopher Rucchio. Book 2 of the Sun Eater series. A series first popularized on BookTube by Mike's fantasy book reviews and catapulted into a totally different stratosphere by the one and only legendary fantasy booktuber Daniel Green, who made like an hour-long video on this series. It combines the best parts of books like Dune and Name of the Wind to create this new original story about Hadrian Marlowe, the Sun Eater. And the series is Hadrian retelling the story of how he ended this intergalactic war, ate the sun, I think. It's been really interesting as an outsider to see the series grow in popularity to such an extent. And what's more fascinating is that the major consensus that I'm seeing is that Book 1, Empire of Silence, is the worst one, and it only goes up from there. And I'm actually really excited to pick this book series up, especially with my good friend Kendall urging me onto it. So it's probably going to happen this year. But what about you? Have you guys tried Sun Eater? Do you think it's overrated, or does it live up to the BookTube hype? Let me know. In 5th place is a book that also made my favorites list of the year. So I'm really happy to have some of my taste be represented on this list. Because in 5th place is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I feel like this list so far has really encapsulated a lot of fantasy booktube, but I did try to get creators from all around booktube, and I found that outside of our fantasy bubble, what people are reading and talking about is much more varied, so there were a lot less books that kept coming up. Another one that kept coming up was Anibot, but it just didn't get enough mentions to make it to the top 10 list. But I'm very happy that Funny Story did. This book was mentioned by readers like A Clockwork Reader, Kalila D, Carly, and Celine. And me, of course, though I didn't include my own rankings in this list. Funny Story is a beautiful romance. However, it does have quite the unusual premise. We follow Daphne right as her engagement falls apart because her fiance discovers that he's actually in love with his childhood best friend, and so he ends the engagement and ditches her for the childhood's best friend. And so stuck in this difficult situation, Daphne decides to move in with Miles, the best friend's ex-partner as well, because she finds herself kicked out of her own home. And although Daphne and Miles historically haven't really gotten along too well, at this point in their lives, perhaps there's more connecting them other than just their failed relationships than it first seems, and it's beautiful. I often say on this channel that I think love is an act of noticing, and nowhere is this demonstrated better and more sincerely than in Funny Story. So, you know, Valentine's season, it's coming up, so if you guys want a nice romance to read right now, I highly, highly recommend this. And it did rank 5 out of all the books in 2024 mentioned by booktubers. In number 4, we have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I swear, there was a moment, maybe middle of the year, where this book was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it, and you really couldn't escape it. And sure enough, coming to the end of the year, we have people like Emily Fox, Patrick Leo, and Sylvia from Library Unbounded speaking super highly of this book, and it just nearly missing out on the top 3 spots on this list. Robert Jackson Bennett has written series before, most notably, I think, Foundry Side, which was kind of like a heist, computer language inspired magic system sort of book. Very interesting. But the success of The Tainted Cup, I think it's fairly safe to say, has trumped that. This book blends a whodunit Sherlockian style mystery with amazing fantasy world building, including bioengineered cities and monstrous creations, and it's gripped the imaginations of so many experienced fantasy readers. So it's definitely one that's made its way onto my personal TBR as well. And if you read it, do let me know. Is the hype worth it? In 3rd place, we have a book that really took over BookTube and held it by its throat last year. But to my surprise, it didn't lose any steam in 2024, and it's The Will of the Many by James Islington. Its praise were being sung from everywhere, from Emily Fox to Leon's Library, the Gwyn brothers, the Ramblers, and Jay from Captured in Words. And it is this Roman Empire-inspired fantasy, perfect for fans of the Gladiator movies, I think, from what I've heard. And we follow Vis, who finds himself in this elite academy, who trains the next generation of rulers. And as Vis makes his way through the academy, he tries to conceal his past that could upend the very system that enslaves him. I heard that the political intrigue is amazing in this book, the plot is amazing in this book, and I'm so surprised that it is a second year that this has gained massive popularity. So who knows, is The Will of the Many the next series that's going to be one of the big BookTube darlings? We have to wait and see. In second place, now this might be a shocker to all of you, especially with all the discourse going on around this book recently, but it's Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, despite a lot of people being very vocal about how much they did not like this book, there are loads of people singing its praises as well. I didn't count the amount of people who liked it versus the amount of people that didn't like it, but putting that aside, there are a lot of people that are saying that Wind and Truth is one of their favorite books of the year. And these people include Bookborn and Alex from Iskandaria. We all know the Stormlight Archive. It's one of the biggest, most popular series on BookTube. I also wonder if just in general, the fact that this book was such an event, you know, Dragonsteel Nexus was centered around this book as well, and everyone was reading it, everyone wanted to be involved. And so I wonder if it made its way onto so many favorites lists of the year just because of the sheer amount of people reading this book. And I wonder if it won't lose steam in the years to come. But as it stands now, the conclusion to the first half of the Stormlight Archive has been liked enough to make its way to the second place on this list. And thus, we have reached the #1 book of 2024 on BookTube. Place your bets in the comments. Because I think that this really isn't a shocking book if you've been kind of in the know and watching a bunch of different people. And I did kind of give a clue earlier in how I phrased the introduction of another book. Do you know it? Well, the #1 best book of 2024, according to BookTube, is Demon in White by Christopher Ruocchio. Yay! So congrats to Christopher Ruocchio for having such a successful year, and I'm really looking forward to picking up his books in the near future. Before we finish up, let me know what you think of this list in the comments. What did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree with the overall BookTube hype train for these books? And also be sure to check back in next week because I will do a top authors of 2024 according to BookTube. And I'll be really curious to see which authors you think made it to that list. Anyway, that's all from me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Letterboxd and Goodreads, all of which are linked down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!